one amazing series of YA novels, an insatiable thirst to relive the glory that is K.A. Applegate's literary masterpiece. This is Animorphs, the Dork-Bajir Chronicles. Number 2, The Visitor.
Hello, and welcome to Animorphs number 2. We will be discussing Animorphs number 2, The Visitor. My name is Mikhail, the host.
My name is Tessa, the expert.
And I am Brayden, the young blood, the newbie, the newest kid on the block, the hot young bad boy with a mysterious past.
The fresh meat.
The one who is able to have succinct introductions. And the police are here to take you away.
Yeah, we can cue the cops.
Let's just get right into it with the recap of this book.
Yes. Okay, so this was issue number 2, The Visitor. This is the first one where we have our switch of narrators, because it is the second, and the narrator switches every book. Our narrator has switched to Rachel, our blonde, gymnastics doing sort of good girl type. We at the beginning of this, we are introduced to the fact that she used to be very close friends with Melissa, who is the daughter of assistant principal Chapman,
which is basically that's a vice principal. They call him an assistant principal, but that's a vice principal, right?
No, I think they call him vice principal too. A couple times. I think they go back and forth depending on the book.
Anyway, they find out that Rachel is used to be very close friends with the daughter of Mr. Chapman. She attempts to use this to get close to Chapman, but finds Melissa resisting her friend-making efforts. So they hatch a little caper to enter the Chapman household by becoming their cat, Mr. Fluffers?
Fluffer McKitty. He's this huge black and white and orange tomcat who just sounds amazing.
After having some bad luck turning into a shrew and trying to catch him as a hawk and all that, they do end up getting him. They touch him up. They go in and they find out apparently Visitor 3 is very upset with the Mr. Chapman Yeerk for not capturing these Andalites yet. And after a standoff where Rachel has to pretend really hard to be a cat, even though they're swinging blades and shit at her face to test her, she sticks it out, and she is not revealed yet. And in fact, she spends a little more time than she probably should with Melissa, her friend, who she now realizes is so distant and sad all the time because both of her parents are Yeerk hosts, and this has made them very distant and cold, and she doesn't feel loved. So Rachel takes a moment to curl up with her friend as a cat, and just purr the sad right out of her. It is during the second visit, however, Rachel is figured out because she hides under the desk of Mr. Chapman, and when Visitor 3 calls the Chapman Yeerk, he realizes the cat's hiding under the fucking desk. Obviously, it's one of these punks who've been trying to fuck with us. Kill it.
Andalite bandit.
Yes, Andalite bandit. Why are we imagining him with an accent automatically?
I don't know.
Actually, a nice, very regal British accent, I think actually fits pretty well, but with a deep voice.
For Visitor 3?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, either that or the angry cop from
Psych. Yeah.
That's who
I don't understand. I don't know that
you've
reference.
seen Psych.
Anyway, there is an incredibly disturbing moment of existential body humor where, not humor, horror.
Body horror.
Body horror, where Rachel is being hauled out of the house, and Visor 3 has told the Chapman Yeerks to grab the daughter as well and make her a Yeerk too. But the Chapman hosts fight back and attempt to just full on slap and choke and kill themselves. And
they're fighting against the
they're
the
fighting
Yeerk in
against
their
your
brain.
control
Yeah,
Yep.
and trying to choke themselves.
Yep.
which is kind of sad, actually. We can talk
incredibly
about
sad.
it. But
It gets worse though because they haul
it
her
does.
off to the construction site. The Melissa is bawling, "Where are you taking my cat?" And
Melissa
she's
doesn't get hauled off.
No, yes,
But
she
they
doesn't
haul
get hauled off because the
Rachel.
Chapman Yeerk decides this is not worth the trouble. I cannot keep a hold of this if I try to bring if I fuck with this guy's daughter. They end up at the construction site and they're about to hand off Rachel, and it's at this point we learn that Yeerks can kind of shift in and out. And we find out that Chapman is a volunteer, wants to talk to Visor 3. And it's at this point we find out Chapman is a volunteer Yeerked, but not 100% willing. Apparently his wife wanted to be Yeerked, which is something that I still don't fully understand why someone would want to be Yeerked, I guess. But maybe we'll get more into that later.
Oh, yeah.
They started threatening to Yeerk his daughter, so he stepped up to the plate and took it in the ear like a champ. And we just see this grown man just bawling, getting beaten up by aliens, and just essentially doing everything but offering to suck them off to keep his daughter alive.
Because that was the whole deal, was you Yeerk me, you stay away from my daughter.
Yeah.
And Visor 3 makes a point to say that, your host is in an important position. We don't want to lose your host, but I am more than willing to replace the Yeerk inside your host with someone who can control it better.
Control the host, yeah.
Which is a weird, humanizing is maybe not the right word, but a humanizing moment for the Yeerks, which is this is work for them. They're not just passively controlling these hosts. It's they need to actually exert some effort all the time. Yeah. Anyways, we're almost at the end of the book there.
So Rachel
is
And the kid
about
carrier.
to be taken away into a spaceship and just tortured right to death. When her friends step in and use a little bit of creative guerrilla warfare to
Marco's in Gorilla Morph.
Yeah, exactly. To save
Guerrilla
her,
warfare.
get her out of there. We meet another new Visor 3 form, a giant, three-legged rock golem with a apparently comedically tiny head,
Yeah.
which is apparently animals can be made of rocks now. Fuck it.
It's like Pokemon, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Aliens are like
absolutely.
Pokemon.
Yeah.
Pokemorphs.
There could be a Visor Dex where you've got a list of characteristics of all the Visor's morphs, which I would read actually in a heartbeat, to be honest.
Our cat's fucking with the microphone. It is an Enderlite bandit. Destroy it.
Destroy the Underlight Bandit and Morph. So anyway, the end of the book
Yeah.
is
Rachel becoming more resolute than ever that she is going to fight the Yeerk menace for the sake of all children,
it's got
like a real hero.
Yeah. It's a
Animorphs
character
2.
building moment for sure for
Animorph
Rachel.
harder. Yeah.
This time it's personal.
Absolutely.
So in book 1, it was personal for Jake because his brother's a Yeerk. And in book 2, it's personal for Rachel because her ex-best friend's dad is a Yeerk.
Oh, and she leaves a note in Melissa's locker that's it's cool. Your dad loves you. You just don't know it.
Your dad loves you more than you could ever
It's just
know.
it's like
Which is like, if you saw
just
that-
like, it's cool. Your dad loves you. You're just acting crazy. Like, this is 100%. It's like,
Yeah.
she doesn't realize it, but she just, she's fucking gaslighting the girl.
It's not helpful at all to get
No.
into it like
No.
that, because it's just like, oh, it's helpful for Rachel in the sense that, like, oh, I feel less guilty now.
Yeah,
But
she
it's
feels
not
a bit
helpful
better.
for Melissa in
I-
the
do any
least.
good for
Oh
Melissa.
my god. If I was an Animorph and I was like, I knew I had easy access to this Chapman guy's office, I would fuck with him so hard.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
I would like, put on, I would have like a fucking mask and like a hoodie, and I would like walk weird and like have like a, I would go full on Batman. I would have like a magazine cutout note that's like, Chapman, real Chapman, you're not alone, and like slip that under his door. And then Chapman finds it, looks around, and sees some fucking punk in a mask, shoots him a finger gun, and runs. And he wouldn't
Teenagers are
catch me
terrifying.
because I'm an Animorph.
Animorphs are invincible. That's
Well,
the takeaway here.
That brings up one of the points that I wanted to talk about, which is like, obviously they wouldn't do that because that's a huge risk to draw attention to themselves.
Because they're
right?
14-year-old pussies.
but at the same time, for all the talk of like, oh, don't draw attention to yourself, we need to maintain our regular lives. The description of them hanging out outside Chapman's house and like, was it 4 or 5 of them talking to a fucking hawk, like perched on a
Really
bush, and then
fucking
one of them turns into a
suspicious.
goddamn rat. It's like, that is
Shrew.
suspicious as
They
hell.
make a huge, a huge point that it's actually a shrew. But also, Kate, at the very beginning of the book, Rachel's walking home from gymnastics feeling kind of unsettled because her ex-best friend that she's been
yeah.
ignoring is like getting kind of weird.
Oh, right,
And a creepy
yes.
guy pulls up his car and talks to this, as established in this book, 14 years old or younger
Fairly
girl.
attractive.
And like tries to walk up behind her and be like, "Hey, pretty lady, do you want some fuck?" And then she turns into half of an elephant and scares him away in the middle of a public
Some
street.
fuck. No, absolutely. I would.
in the
No,
middle
she
of a
turned
public
around
street.
a corner.
Yeah, but it was still a public street. Like,
I
what
know,
the fuck,
yeah.
Rachel?
She obviously, like, what if that didn't work? What if you turned into a half elephant and he was like,
Exactly.
oh, yeah.
You're a big, beautiful woman.
I'm into it. I knew you were down.
Or if the guy was a fucking Yeerk and was just like, oh, I know who you are now. That's the end.
Yeah,
like, that's
know who you
exactly
are.
what happened in
That's
the
it.
first book, is
That's
like
the end.
one person learned who they were and almost kill all of them.
Well, didn't even know who they were. Just got suspicious that Cassie was sneaking around. But also, I don't know. Did we talk about how it was kind of maybe he was a racist because he was a cop and she was a little black girl? Talk about that.
I don't know. I think this book
Anyway,
this book was written pre-racism.
I think
Oh yeah,
the
this book was
Yeerks
written
are
when America
above
fixed racism. Yeah, there was a lot of fucking risks that they took for no reason here. Where it's still them figuring out how to be good guys, but like Rachel gets found out being underneath the desk because she's having an argument with Jake, who's a flea on her back, and isn't paying attention when Chapman moves his foot and he kicks her. If she'd been paying any kind of attention, she could have jumped out of the way. But
amateur
she
move.
didn't. And also,
Yeah.
one thing of this book brought up was that, so Yeerks take control over humans and you don't know that they're different. They know exactly
They
how to act like humans.
total freaks.
Whereas her parents act like total freaks. Like, what the fuck? Was it because that they're trying to fight the host bodies the whole time? And that's how Melissa can tell? Because really, in the canon that Animorphs establishes, she shouldn't be able to tell at all.
Well, okay, so that's weird, right? Because
like,
at one
it
point
just-
they say like, oh, Yeerks, when they're controlling you can't tell the difference, and
Yeah.
yet immediately in the first book, even with Tom, it's like he was acting extremely different. Like for 2 months now, he's been acting very odd.
when they came in and saw Chapman, the Chapman character was sitting down watching a blank TV.
Just staring and being a total freak.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
pretty
Katie.
strange.
Andalite Bandit, get away from the mic. Maybe this can be like explained away in the meta that the Yeerk invasion on Earth is still fairly like it's only just becoming. a bigger thing, and these are new Yeerks who haven't really controlled anything yet, so they're still trying to get control.
Oh my God.
And figure out how to be a person.
Is Earth like the fire festival for Yeerks?
Oh my God.
They're like, all these thousands, millions and millions of bodies, so easy to control. All we have to do is pay a luxury amount and we get in. It's a hot take. Oh, what the fuck? They fight back? What the hell do we do? Watch blank screens? Oh no, we're trapped.
Oh no, we're trapped.
Ja Rule. Ja Rules are 3. You tricked us.
Ja Rules are 3.
Okay, just to shift gears a bit, I kind of wanted to know how you guys felt. Tessa, obviously you've read ahead now, and you've read these many times, but I've only read them, this is probably the second time I've read these books, and Brayden, it's your first time. I'm curious to know how you feel like the shift in perspective. Did it feel weird? Did you feel like you wanted to know more from Jake's perspective and less from Rachel's? I personally feel like it was not bad, actually. The voices were the voice of the narrator made sense for Rachel, even though it was still generic white person.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. Just when I mean, now that I'm so far ahead and reading, I'm book fucking 34. But in the beginning, from what I remember, the books, Jake and Rachel, the first two, didn't seem that different. Again, in the meta, maybe you could explain it that, oh, they're cousins, of course they'll be similar, but fuck you, that's a bad excuse. They were just they were a bit similar still. I find later on that the books tend to differentiate better as the authors figure out each character's voice, and also as the characters themselves develop more into their soldier counterparts. But yeah, I don't know. I just kind of was like, oh yeah, it's a new narrator, but I mean, pretty much the same person as your cousin.
But as somebody who's used to it, it's not really fair. I'm curious to know, Brayden, if you feel that, because I haven't read Game of Thrones, but if you guys have, I think it's a different perspective every chapter. The point I'm trying to make is that it's not a new thing. It's actually kind of postmodern in a way to switch narrators like that. But now it's infiltrated our popular literature so much that people don't even blink twice. When I was a kid, having read one until the end in order, it was very weird. I was so used to reading fantasy novels where you follow a few characters,
the same protagonist
or one protagonist all the way through. But I'm curious now in 2017 if it feels weird at all.
No, I don't think so.
No, certainly not.
No,
Brayden,
I mean, like you said, Game of Thrones has been walking this path for a while, and it is probably, I'd say it's probably the premier, the top literature that's going around right now. Everything. I mean, there's obviously more sort of in vogue books, but I feel like Game of Thrones is going to be something. Maybe we won't even realize it till sort of the century has come and gone, but I feel like Game of Thrones will probably, because of the popularity of the Song of Ice and Fire will be very popular because of the popularity of Game of Thrones. I feel like that is going to I feel like people will recognize and know this style very well, and I feel like maybe the Animorphs were a bit ahead of their time then in that way.
Yeah, it almost feels like Power Rangers or that genre where it was you follow the story of so and so for this episode, but it's over so fast. It's really more about the team as we go forward. Obviously,
it's an ensemble.
Yeah, and Brayden, you've obviously figured out that next book will be a different narrator,
yes,
and they go in order, and eventually we'll go back to Jake, and the next one will be Rachel, and so on and so on. So I'm curious. I'm just going to... We don't have to talk too much more about it, but I want to check in as you read the series to see how that flows for you. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about? I have one more thing I want to talk about, which, again, it'll come up throughout the series, but it's the idea that the morphs, and Brayden, you touched on this last time, but the morphs as a way to escape.
Yeah.
For Jake, the Carolina lizard, or the green anole lizard, was very
traumatic.
not an escape. It was like a horror show
Yeah.
for him, right? But for Rachel, she pretty specifically says, not so much with the shrew, mind you, but with the cat, she specifically says, I cannot wait to become the cat again, referring to like the physical prowess of the cat and the confidence of the cat. Mm-hmm. And obviously for Tobias, this came up way earlier. But I wonder how much you guys see the relationship between addiction and the way that they talk about some of the morphs.
Like they're addicted to morphing.
Well, it's not that they're addicted to morphing. It's just that they're showing behaviors of addicts.
Or they get a rush from certain morphs. Well, and as we'll see later in the series, like the very next book, in fact, Jake is very strong on we have to use our morphs only for missions. Like, this is not just a fun game. We can't waste time. And then there's a couple moments for lightheartedness where people do morph to waste time or to do something trivial. And I think that's just because they kind of get a rush off of doing something cool.
I think, maybe this is a bit too much of a peek behind the curtain and we might have to edit this out, but it's either this book or book 3. I've just finished book 3. Marco directly says to Rachel something like, easy for you to say, you get off on this. This is a and like, can they say that?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, can they say that?
In like 9 to 12. And I think what Marco is referring to is Rachel's developing a sense of recklessness and kind of like the adrenaline she gets from rushing into battle or doing something crazy, like sneaking into a high-powered Yeerk's basement where he's talking to Visser 3. Some like a dangerous situation where she could, where the threat of death is very real, and she's like, let's do it, gung-ho.
I get that.
In a way, it's very much like a characterization of Rachel, right? Because we knew that she was already kind of like an overconfident person. And so I think the book does a good job of being like, hey, an overconfident person, given some kind of power, will feel a rush from that. But as we get into like Marco's books and back to Jake and stuff, I think, Brayden, you'll see the characterization, they start to fall a lot more into the what they were basically called in the first book, which is like Jake is the leader, Rachel is like the muscle, basically. Marco is like the sad clown, Cassie is like the talent, if you want to call it that, and Tobias is like the mental health mirror.
I feel a big part of Rachel's thing, though, is like she has this image as like I don't know. It feels like there's like this sort of like perfect girl, like the dollhouse sort of like sheen she has on. Like she's this. It feels like she has like, you know, like everything's perfect. It's a picture perfect Barbie dollhouse. But underneath it's all sort of it's a facade. She feels not good. She feels sad, and like she's just faking it, and like friends of hers are disappearing and she doesn't, not physically but like going away, and there's nothing she can do. And the big part of the cat that she loves is its confidence.
He's got the swagger that she wishes she always had.
And basically what you're saying is that Animorphs number 2, The Visitor, is the spec script for Inside Out, but Disney Pixar. Because you just described the literal plot of that movie. No, that's great though, because honestly, it's a story that I think needs to be told. I think Inside Out was a great movie, and I think the idea of like who you present yourself to be and who you really are is something that kids' books don't often address. It's often me versus some external force. It's not always me versus like my own misgivings and my own flaws and also external forces. Do you know what I mean?
There's this thing I always come back to whenever I'm talking about stuff like this. When TS and I were in theater school, we did these projects called solo flights.
Oh yeah.
It was one of our first opportunities to write shows ourselves, and it was like a one-person show. We had to fool around with like being all the different characters in a single show.
At least 3 different characters in a 10-minute show that we wrote.
All of them, without fail, the big, I mean, not all of them, like mine didn't do this, just for the record. The big, like, breaking point when, like, the hero character did the right thing, or, like, when the hero broke their shackles and became, like, solved their problem, was either because of or directly influenced by a large showing of emotion. Like, I remember very specifically this one kid, Jake. I call him a kid. He's twice my height and amazingly successful, and I'll never ever match up to him, the son of a bitch. He did a show where, like, this little kid was getting lured. He went to a park alone and was getting lured away by 2 different pedophiles.
Oh yeah, that was his.
Who were trying to lure him away with candy and the other away with toys.
Whoa.
And he's just meekly like, "Oh, I'm not supposed to go away with strangers. Oh, thank you, but I'm not supposed." And the big conclusion that, like, just like these pedophiles are fighting over this child. The big conclusion, our hero gets away, is just the kid starts yelling and, like, "Stop! Go away! I don't like you!"
I mean, it shouldn't be funny, but the way you did that was pretty good.
Now your pedophile's trying to kidnap a kid, and you suddenly, like, "Oh, this one's a little bit mouthy. We gotta get out of here." And just, it's a very detectable pattern.
How does that relate to what we were talking about?
People worship in stories, perhaps not like, perhaps not a level of stoicism or, like, just like general working towards a great skill. Like, a lot of things, I feel like Rachel could have done a lot of the shit she did in this book right from the beginning, but it was that sort of confidence she got from the cat, the sort of, like, shit, like, everyone was telling her, like, "Rachel, do not stay in there for another single second," and she was like, "No, the confidence of the cat informs me to save my friend's emotions."
Well, that is probably the YA format coming into it, right? Because to sell these things to publishers, you need to be like, "Hey, kids will learn something from this." Even if that thing, I mean, obviously the literal thing is not something a kid could learn. Like, "Oh, if you learn how to morph, you'll be a better person." I think it's more like, "Oh, you need to, like, learn how to explore your boundaries to really understand."
Also ask your parents what "get off" means. And scene.
First we're going to be like, what do you think the series, how do you think the series will change based on what we've learned in this book? Okay. Like, did this book set anything up that you think is going to change?
Okay, well, obviously, I feel like we're going to see a lot less. Rachel has sort of been a wild card. She's like, "I don't think we should stay up that late, guys, but gosh darn it, if you guys are up for it, I'm up for it." She's going to be more gung-ho from here on out. Visor, like, the Visor knows, like, there is a guerrilla attack force on their way to, like, directly mess up their shit, and they are not under the floorboards anymore. This is a attack force that Visor 3 is having to deal with, and we're gonna see a lot more, like, probably physical harm possibly come to these kids as they are faced with the very real possibility of an upped ante from these Visor folk, from the Visors and the Yeerks. Oh, another thing we learned, Visor 3 can turn into a horrible translucent slug that sucks his own men out of their brains and kills the host.
Oh yeah, he's a Yeerk eater. I don't know if it kills the host, but I'm pretty sure that if it doesn't, they shoot the host dead because they don't want. Or they just give him another Yeerk to infest because they don't want humans wandering around.
I think we do get into that more. I think in the Chronicles book, we talk about that monster. Isn't it like feared? It's a feared
it's like the
monster in Yeerk legend
Yeerk eater.
of this giant alien that can suck you out of your
Yeerk's
host.
bane.
The Yeerk eater, yeah. Well, obviously, we'll get into that more later. I think we're probably going to wrap it up there. Next week, we're going to be doing Animorphs number... next week we'll be live from the gardens. We'll be talking about the domestic cat and the shrew, the two main morphs from this book. And the following week we'll be doing Animorphs number 3, The Encounter. Until then, I've been Mikhail, the host.
I've been Tessa, the expert.
And I have been Brayden, the new kid.
And this has been Animorphs, the Dork-Bajir Chronicles. If you're looking for more Animorphs content, you can find us on SoundCloud, Facebook, and Twitter. Just search for Animorphs, the Dork-Bajir Chronicles. Brought to you by
Collective Legacy.
a podcast network.